Hey guys, my name is Rogan from Prism, and welcome to 10 Things Only Old Warrior Cat fans will remember. The first Warrior Cat books were published in 2003, and since then they've had a fan base, with the first few animations centered around it starting back in 2009, with animators like fightfootwarrior or alli. Most Warrior Cats fans nowadays know those animators thanks to the ripples they cause in the community, and the numerous projects their works have inspired. But there are some experiences that only older fans know about, like how your parents used to tell you about how they had to walk back to home in negative 20-degree cold. People will talk about these experiences. Just a small note that this is mainly centered around my own experiences as someone who primarily used Scratch and Wattpad in the fandom's early days. I invite you all to share your own unique experiences in the comments as people who were on other websites. So without further ado, let's start the nostalgia trip. Number 1. Vicious hatred of Ferncloud. For a bunch of preteen girls, the Warrior Cats fandom in its early days was surprisingly misogynistic. They considered Squilf annoying even though she had the exact same traits as her male peers, and strangely enough, they tended to despise Ferncloud. Though I never got any solid reasons, the common consensus was that she took up too much room in the nursery and never really did anything that was, and I quote, useful to the clan. The hate got so bad that at one point, an account was created on Wattpad called Ferncloud Defenders. That account happened to have a Fern Daisy fanfic, and now I am definitely into that ship. Supposedly, this rabid hate of ThunderClan's greatest queen led to her being killed off in The Last Hope. We can only hope the same will be said about Bramblestar after Light in the Mist is released, though his death will be deserved unlike poor Ferncloud's, whose only crime was having kids. Number 2. Warrior Cat RP badges. Before Discord, Warrior Cat's role players would often use the comments of YouTube videos or Wattpad stories to RP. However, another place where people would gather were forums. On these forums, sometimes badges would be there, but the forum was set up well enough and they would be administered to RPers. Most forums had at least one badge, though some had numbers of badges tallying into the hundreds. These badges could do simple things like recognize one's clan, or how many posts one has, though sometimes the badges were specific to things in RPs, such as killing a badger. Like any war, there was competition for them, and people harassed admins and mods to get them at times. Number 3. Scratch artists. On Scratch, just like YouTube, there were some popular animators. On both sites, they tended to have the same qualities, and it's like looking through a mirror. So I'll compare some animators you might know on the YouTube side to their relatively lesser popular equivalent on the Scratch's site. It's unfortunate that a lot of people get overlooked just because it's on a site different than YouTube. So I kinda just wanna tell you what you might have missed by sticking to YouTube. Keep in mind that these aren't really old animators on the Scratch site, as most were popular in 2014 as opposed to the much older 2012 dates commonly seen on the YouTube side. Silver Shimmer 43 was similar to Momatad, as they tended to use short audio clips to make skits. In their earlier days, Silver did an impressive number of art traits, though as they grew more and more, they moved on to more original content. Surprisingly, the last time they lagged onto Scratch was 11 months ago, as opposed to the years most of their peers have been offline for. Dash Skystar Dash was similar to any Warrior Cats fan animators on YouTube at the time. Their AMVs were especially popular, and I remember remixing some of them as a kid. They were so popular that at one point they had 9,000 notifications in their inbox, though most of them were not from comments but from people liking their content, as the Scratch notification system is fairly different from YouTube's. Number 4. Roblox servers. Warrior Cats fans nowadays are spoiled. They have merch, Disney quality animations, and even an officially recognized Roblox game. Well, back in my day, the only Roblox games we had looked terrible. The ones I remember the most are Forest Territories and the Lake Territories, which are not very creatively named. The models look like one of those projects your science teacher makes you do where you tape a bunch of cans together for a reduce, reuse, recycle. The quality of the games was very poor altogether, but it was the best early fandom can do, and I have to admit there's still some sort of charm to it. They were hacked often, and I remember being online for such occasions. Though it likely caused a lot of grief for the owners of the server and any coders, I have to admit, being in the middle of a hacking was rather fun. More fun than role-playing with tin can looking cats. This little section has 3 things crammed together because all of them are related to the state of maps in the past and what shaped the looks of early maps. So number 5 is going to be a larger section. We are going to talk about organization, scripts, and designs of early maps. A relatively modern invention in maps has to be the organization. Before 3 years ago or so, when Discord came out rather, map hosts mainly relied on YouTube comments to communicate with participants, making maps hard to complete. Even though Skype existed back then, giving out your Skype was more of a personal thing than giving out your Discord, so that didn't always happen. Perhaps because of that, early maps from back before 2014 rarely had scripts. Instead, they would often have a running theme or even just characters that maps revolved around. With certain characters, that would mean parts would often feature the same events or not mix very well together. Though the practice of having a character as the map focus and not a script has left the Warrior's Handbook, it is still common in the Wings of Fire fandom, and a lot of other fandoms are still in their early stages. Even in maps centered around one character like mentioned above, designs were often not used, contributing to even more of the patchwork look as everyone could draw the same characters differently. That was a problem especially with Scourge, because no one can decide on the color of his collar. No one still can up to this day, though I am personally a believer in purple collar Scourge. Number 6, the new Prophecy dice game. The old Warrior Cats website wasn't the best. It was clunky, hard to navigate, and often contained false information. Even though it did have the forums, that didn't make up for its lack of actually interesting content. With the exception of the game. The new Prophecy dice game was a flash game where a player chose a clan, which gave them a bonus, such as moving diagonally, and then roll the dice to see how many tiles they would move on each board. Each tile had the chance to contain prey, which would give you health, or a predator, which you would have to fight. If you lost the fight and lost too much HP, at some point you would die. And the fight wasn't even interesting as it was just rolling dice. The entire game was rolling dice. Some bonuses were added to the rolls determined by what clan you chose in the beginning. The goal of the game was to travel in an undetermined amount of territory to make it to the lake. Even though I played it constantly, I never got to the end of the game, though I've seen images of people doing so. Out of all things from the old website, I wish they had kept, this has to be number 1. I can see why they didn't want to have to deal with the outdated Flash project. Unfortunately, no copies I can find online still work due to Flash dying, but I'd love to see if anyone has an emulator that can play the game so I can see if I can beat it once and for all. Number 7, spoofs. Warrior Cats fanfiction is one of the cornerstones of the community, as the clan structure provides a great framework for endless stories. This free structure means that often canon characters are ignored. However, there's one genre of fanfiction that was common that was the exception. Spoofs. Spoofs usually were a short-form script type of writing used to tell jokes. Though individual accounts made them, sometimes group accounts would do it as filler between fanfictions and other larger projects. These spoofs contained a lot of old internet humor, but they're still funny to this day, even if a lot of them are incredibly low effort. Number 8 is eye markings. Alright, I'll admit this is a very small thing, but almost every single old style design I've seen has a triangle near the eye, dots near the eye, or a little arrow near the eye. A few even have eye shadow or eye spots going completely around the eye, but other shapes tend to be more common. The addition of eye markings do not only identify old style, but also help in animation by drawing the viewer's attention to the face of the cat and prevents designs from becoming confusing to look at during fast sequences. Out of all old warrior style design choices, this one was most cool and sensible in the context of animation. Number 9, Sweetpaw's death. Warrior Cats facts videos. You've probably seen them before. They often use stolen art with music in the background and text on top. Though they still exist today, they used to be even more of a plague on the community. Oftentimes, these lazy videos are full of misinformation, and sometimes enough people see them that the fake becomes canon. Sweetpaw's death is an example of it. In a lot of old Warrior Cats fact videos, it was said that Sweetpaw was in a diabetic coma when she was buried. That would mean she was buried alive, which is dark even for Warrior Cats canon. However, this was of course false. I think the coma thing was a theory that had gotten taken out of context, or a bit from the errands that got taken out of context, because it attacks the Blue Star's prophecy directly contradicts the coma theory, and so she died of an illness after eating rotten prey. Sorry if that's not dramatic enough for you, but you can just write a fan story if you want about it. Last but not least, Adventures in Bayclan. I feel like this came later in the Warrior Cats fandom, but it was nevertheless essential to the Scratch experience. Adventures in Bayclan was created by Wildflight, and it was a video game centered around life in Bayclan, one of the 4 clans around a giant ocean, with your cat starting as a kit and eventually becoming a deputy. In this game, there were many scripted events, but you were also able to train. The amount you train in certain skills could affect the plot, as well as what cats you talk to in camp. Everyone either played Adventures on Bayclan or made their own copies, as it was one of the only complete Warrior Cat Simulators games of its time, and games of its quality are still rare. More recently, the game got a sequel called The Lake's Call. This game had the ambitious feature of save files. By copying and pasting a code you get at the ending of the first game, you can play with the cat who you had in that game and continue where you left off. Interestingly enough, there was a game called The Lake's Call that was left unfinished due to Wildflight going to college. Though the bare bones of the game is up, there are no scripted events, and the only things you can do are roam camp, train, and play a few video games. When I was bored in school, I always pulled up Adventures in Bayclan as it was unlocked by the firewall. If you've never played it before, I recommend pulling up Scratch and changing that right away. This completes my list of early fandom experiences. If you were around in the old days, then comment below what you remember and I might make another video on this topic. If you like this video, then I recommend you subscribe, as I intend to make more talking videos on this channel if this gets a well enough reception. That's all, Prism out.